Hey guys, thanks for coming and joining us. My name is Trevor Beck. I'm going to be the host today for our presentation. I'm just going to do a couple of housekeeping things just before we get started. If you have a question, please go ahead and use the chat function. What I will do is I'll keep an eye on that, and then as time permits and when there's a nice time for a break, I will throw the questions back at our presenters. You won't be able to raise your hand or anything like that. You won't be able to use your microphones and stuff. So don't worry about that. Just use the chat function for now. Once the presentation is over and the recording's off, I will turn on all the microphones and cameras so we can do a little chat and that kind of stuff like that. That's pretty much it. I'm going to turn it over to Joan and Denise. Guys, do you want me to give you like a 30-minute warning or a 45-minute warning or anything like that so we can keep it under an hour?
Sure, whenever.
Sure.
Okay, I'll do a 45-minute.
Okay, perfect.
Sure.
Okay, and that's it. It's over to you. You're on.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. The first thing that you need to understand is this really isn't Denise and Joan academics. This is two horse-obsessed teenage girls who've never gotten over it. We could talk about horses forever, but we're going to try to also focus on the travelogue bit. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Denise Roy. I was in the Faculty of Fine Arts and Communications for quite a long time in the Arts and Cultural Management program, but I finished my career after many long years as Dean.
I'm Joan Patrick. I was a faculty member predominantly in the School of Business, or predominantly a faculty member in the School of Business, retired in 2017. What year did you retire?
A bit after that.
Okay. Anyway, and these are our horses. This is Denise's horse Shack and my horse Fox.
So our horses live just outside Edmonton, just east of Ardrossan, at a beautiful facility called Empire Equestrian. So you can see in the background where they live. My boy there, Shack, is 30 years old. I bought him over 20 years and have 20 years ago and have ridden him almost every day since. And Jones is somewhat younger. Hey, Shack's little brother.
Yeah, he's Shack's little brother. He's just in terms of field brothers. 19. I've had him since he was 6, and yeah, we ride every day we can.
Yeah. So Joan and I often, of course, ride together, and we have a beautiful facility there. It has a track in the background and an indoor arena, so we can ride year round. The other thing that you need to understand when we get excited about our international adventures, people often think that we take these horses with us. The answer to that is a big no. We're not quite qualified for the Olympics and international competition yet. So the boys stay at home, and when we travel, we ride other horses.
Indeed. So we do get off the property periodically. One of our favorite things to do is to go trail riding. The 4 pictures starting from the left are at the Cooking Lake Blackfoot Provincial Recreation Area. Some of you may know it as the place where the Birkebeiner is held in the winter, and it's directly south of the of Elk Island Park. Elk Island Park National Park straddles the Yellowhead, and this park recreation area is just attached to the south boundary of that. Again, it's just a beautiful recreation area. I haven't really captured the variety of landscape and terrain that there is there, but we love to have a day out. And we, our barn is 5 minutes down the road. Denise and I have a horse trailer, and we'll go over with some friends periodically. And it's a great place to go have a day, get off, and let the horses tie up at the rail there, have our lunch, etc. The picture in the top right is trail riding a little further afield, not with our horses again. They stayed home on this particular event, but this is out at the Black Cat Guest Ranch, which is just a bit northwest of Hinton, up in the Blue Lake area. Lovely place to be. We've been there a couple times for some trail rides with friends, etc. It's another lovely place to go and get on the horses.
And like all retirees, I love to travel. So whenever I travel, I make a beeline for where is the most convenient horse. So you can see me here in a variety of places around the world in the bottom left. That's Cappadocia. In Turkey. In Mexico, I've ridden a couple of different places. That was the most recent one near San Jose del Cabo. I also had a fantastic experience a few years ago where I actually had a lesson and met a woman in Mexico who was an international competitor who was Canadian, who actually let me ride their dressage horses, was fantastic. I've been riding in Waterton, as you see. Also, we took a group of students a few years ago on a study tour to Edinburgh. And again, I made a beeline for the horses, and there's me with that lovely gray lady. And most recently was in Portugal. These are Spanish bred horses. Look at the size of them, beautiful, big, gorgeous beings. And we had a fantastic ride along the beach.
A few places I've been, and I've put some that include some of the longer rides. I spent a week riding in Ireland, the 3 pictures on the left there. Top left, you'll see, I mean, one of the favorite views of most equestrians is that view through the horse's ears. This lovely Irish sport horse that I was riding. But the bottom left, the guy in front of me there is the guide Willie Lee. He's renowned in Ireland as the top breeder of Connemara horses. And he has led these sort of week-long trail rides over the Irish landscape for decades. Real character. Mexico, the picture and the picture with Mexico and the one below. This is Guayabitos, north port of Ireland, up in the hills above the town, and then a lovely couple of days riding on the beach as well. I had to include the picture of the horse looking out over the water there. This horse was just in beautiful condition, lovely, clean.
Look at that white.
Look at that white. It doesn't happen all that often, but anyway, beautiful place and a horse to ride. Sarapi, his name was, of course, being Mexican. We spent a week riding on the eastern slopes of Alberta, just west of Nordegg. Rode in about 20 miles to a camp and rode out from there every day. And then we've done another weekend or so there too. Beautiful Alberta landscape. After riding in Ireland, we met a couple of girls who were on this week-long trip in Newcastle, and they were having a riding day out, so I joined them across after. So that was cool. Yorkshire Dales, bottom picture there. Right in front of me is Tony Fell, my husband, and this is his home valley in the Dales. So it's lovely to have ridden there. The 2 pictures on the right, Thunderbird in Langley, BC, and Spruce Meadows. This is my horse Fox, and that's as far afield as we've gone competing. Thunderbird is a beautiful equestrian facility at just east of Vancouver, I guess, and then Spruce Meadows at the bottom, places where we've ridden and competed.
And this is a wide variety of pictures because not only do we ride horses in other places, we see horse-related art and all kinds of other things that we must photograph. So if you look in the top left-hand corner, there's me. The only time I'll win a thoroughbred race. We laughed at that because this horse Big Hug was actually bred by the owner of the property where we keep our horses and was the best 2-year-old?
Yeah, the top 2-year-old filly in Alberta last year.
Yeah. And then some of you will see the big silver horses down below. That's the Kelpies in Scotland. A picture of my horse on his 30th birthday. Some pictures of me coaching Joan up there at competition, and some statues, and a couple pictures in Britain.
The bottom right is the races at York, and it was not the biggest meet of the year, but it was a relative amount. You could just see the volume of people there, like tens of thousands. Bit different than out here at Century Mile. Picture over on the left-hand side, a city police horse in New York. Of course, we're on Broadway to see a show, but oh look, there's a horse. My sister has a great picture of me over talking to the horse while we're waiting to go to our show. But yeah, anything horse related, we're on it. Seahorse, horse in the Louvre. This is me?
Yeah, Spruce Meadows outside Calgary.
This is an annual pilgrimage. Literally, Denise and I separately probably had gone for a decade, and have been going together for the last couple of decades, if you will. So we have the picture in the middle of the two of us. This is just this September. Spruce Meadows is a very big, world-renowned equestrian facility just outside Calgary, and they hold the Masters weekend, world competition for at many times the biggest prize money in a competition in the world. So we go down there every year and participate by watching and enjoying ourselves. And as the 3 pictures of Denise, oh, there you go. Denise is delighted to be able to say she's ridden at Spruce Meadows.
There you go.
Anyway, so it is a big equestrian competition, jumping competition. You can see the pictures on the right-hand side there, illustrated. It's as I say, it's a real, the picture in the middle, we've got like 30 different versions over many years. A couple other friends commonly, but certainly Denise and I go every year.
Yeah, and just I would say, sometimes people say, well, I don't know anything about horses, or they're a little bit intimidated. But Spruce Meadows is in our backyard, and it really is a world-class facility and a world-class event. And it is a fantastic weekend to just take your family, because there's lots of other entertainment and shopping and food and everything else. And it's really just a fun time. And actually, we have traveled to international competitions where you pay $100 per ticket. You can, even in this day and age, I think it's $10 for a general admission to the site. So if you've never been, I'd recommend you check it out. They have competitions all through the summer. The Masters is the biggest one, and it's always the weekend after Labor Day.
Yeah. Just in terms of things families can do, for example, this year they had the world blacksmithing competition, which was really interesting, but they also had like the world corgi racing championship. It was hilarious. Anyway, so there's lots of stuff lots of stuff to look at and do, as well as horses.
So in terms of other world competitions, we got the bright idea in 2010 that the World Equestrian Games, which is an international competition that includes all of the horse-related disciplines. So we have dressage, we have show jumping, we have driving, we have vaulting, and also the reining, and also the para events for riders with disabilities. So we figured Kentucky was just about our back door. So we got down there, and here's a couple of pictures of the competition. And being academics, we decided we also had to research the question, was there such a thing as good bourbon? And you can imagine that took us on a number of adventures. And the answer is a most definitive yes.
Yes. If you're interested, we won't play it here, but if you're interested, one of the disciplines being dressage, I've put a link down at the bottom here. This gray horse did not win. I think he placed sixth in the Grand Prix special, but an incredible dressage. It's like dancing horses, if you will, just really dynamic and a real crowd favorite. So if after the fact you want to go and link on that, it's just fun to watch.
Yeah, he's beautiful.
So having been inspired by Kentucky, we thought, France, let's go to the next one. So we did go to the next World Equestrian Games in 2014, held in Cannes in Normandy. We happened to stay in this town, bottom left there, Armand-sur-les-Mers, and it was one of the landing points, or right in that area, one of the landing points of the D-Day invasion, bringing the Second World War closer to an end. The bottom left, as you can see, is the town street, and up in the back there is a castle. We actually stayed in that castle. The family had the upstairs, and they have probably what was the servants' quarters, if you will, a beautiful big bed and breakfast. It's just lovely, wonderful facility. The top right-hand picture is the picture from our deck looking out, and we swam in the ocean. It was wonderful. Big left-hand picture, the big playing field, if you will, of the show jumping, just to see how big it was. The early days, so the crowd wasn't as full as it was later days and stuff. Picture on the right. In the middle, our friend Kathy Magor, who is prof at U of A, and she features prominently in a great number of our equestrian things and the Iceland trip. So you'll see more of Kathy.
So we are going to transition, believe it or not, we're getting to Iceland now. Ooh. But maybe this is a point, Trevor, if there's any questions or comments, if anybody wants to ask now before we carry on with this part.
Nothing's been asked yet. I think they're just basically just enamored in watching all the horses.
Riding along.
I'll just wait a second in case anybody wants to jump in, but
yeah, we do. That was just a smattering. We tried to limit it because we could, as Denise says, go on and on about the pictures, the events we've been to, etc. When did you start riding, Denise? Tell us about that.
Well, I bought that horse.
Yes.
I decided in my 40s, I'd always loved horses, and the only thing I ever did was go on little trail rides when I was a kid. And I had never taken a lesson or anything. I started in my 40s taking a few lessons. And when I was 50, the horse I own now appeared at the barn and was for sale, and I took the plunge. So I had never really ridden seriously or anything else. So it's living proof that you can teach an old dog new tricks.
You keep learning.
I keep learning, yeah.
Because you still, I mean, we still take that, right? He still jumps. That
Yeah.
30-year-old, he still jumps. He still does dressage lessons. He's a wizard. I rode a lot as a kid, and then I had about a 30-year hiatus. I'd had an accident, a couple of accidents, not horse related, but broke my pelvis a couple of times, and was told by the guy in the white coat, well,
Don't ride.
you can't ride, whatever. And, you know, in those days, it'd be close to 50 years ago, you listened. And so I had a long time without horses, always missed them. And then thankfully, and I owe everything to Denise and to Shaq, her horse, for bringing me back into the fold about, well, almost 20 years ago now. And yeah, it's been great.
Yeah. Okay.
So no questions. Just guys, those of you that are watching, if you want to use the chat to ask a question, by all means, and then we'll periodically stop like Joan just did. Lynn just had one. Did you do your own research to find places to ride in your travels, or are there horse travel adventures? I imagine like a website or something like that.
Yeah, there are, if you're interested in sort of the horse tourism, you know, and going on guided rides in various places in the world, there are a few major companies that are sort of like travel agents. You know, one is Globetrotting. I forget what, but if you search that, you will find those companies list rides like 20 or 30 different locations around the world. We did not go through them because we preferred, with respect specifically to our Iceland tour, to go a little more directly to the companies themselves. So we went direct to a company in Iceland for that. But, you know, we typically do a whole variety of methods. You know, you research through the companies and then you pick up on some threads. We certainly, in terms of Iceland, asked advice from other riders we knew who had been there and from, you know, other kind of sources.
We, one of the sources of information, Tony brought a book home when we started to talk about going to Iceland. Tony brought a book home, being the librarian that is, from the library, a memoir actually of a woman who had gone to Iceland, has gone to Iceland many times from the New England area, and was a great book. And funnily enough, I was going to visit my sister who was living in Connecticut at the time, and looking in the bio of the woman, the author, Tori Bielski, who had written this book, realized, wow, she lives right in the same town as Allison in Connecticut, or as Allison was living. My sister was living there. So I actually went and had a drink with her. My sister and I went and had a drink with her, and she gave us lots of information, including the name of the company that we ultimately went with. So it was a great memoir and giving us ideas. But the other part of this, I will say, is that Denise is, for Kathy and I anyway, Denise is our travel director. When you say, did we do research, whatever, Denise and I have or Kathy and I have elected Denise, and her retirement from the position has been refused several times, so she's still in charge.
Yeah,
she's our travel director.
I'm the totally untrained travel agent,
but she does a ton of research on our behalf, and we're happy to have her in that role.
Okay, so let's talk about the main event here, Iceland, and this phenomenal picture of the icebergs. For us, this was really a bucket list thing. And we did do the trip in the summer of 2021, but we actually started talking about it when we were in Normandy, and you just saw the date. That was 2014. So there were lots of, we should go. When should we go? Who should we go with? What company? You know, blah, blah, blah. And we started to get much more serious about it. Just towards 2020. And of course, what happened is we had decided we wanted to go, and we actually booked to go, and lo and behold, COVID hit. So we had to postpone our trip. And the next summer, we were actually very fortunate. There was a little period there, if you can remember back into the black hole that was COVID, where things got a little better and the quarantine regulations kind of went by the wayside in Iceland, and we were able to travel that summer. Things got worse again in the fall, and we wouldn't have been able to go in the fall. But it was for sure a very challenging time to travel, as many of you would know, because it was changing every day. What were the regulations? What paperwork did you need? Who had controlled shots, et cetera, et cetera. But we were able to somehow navigate our way through all of that. And I must say that Iceland was much less bureaucratic about all of it than Canada, for sure.
Yeah.
Canada was the most complicated side of it. The other thing, of course, that happened during that period was that the travel industry as a whole was in chaos, and planes and canceled flights, et cetera, were very much the norm. So my husband and I actually, since he had relatives who lived in Reykjavik, we went a week ahead. Kathy and Joan joined us through complications with their WestJet flight because they had to transfer in Toronto. Their luggage got lost. So they arrived, and the first crisis of our trip was we need underwear. So
socks and underwear.
Socks and underwear. So we spent their first day in Reykjavik. We actually Googled underwear near us and went on a search.
And I got the most expensive pair of underwear I've ever bought, a $32 pair of merino wool underwear, which are too precious to wear practically. Thankfully, our luggage did arrive the morning we were
hours before we were
joined, and it was just because the flights only came out of Toronto twice a week, and so we arrived on one, and thankfully there was one flight landing the morning we were to join up with our riding tour. But originally when we booked, we had been able to book originally a direct flight because I think it was in Normandy, and part of the thing about Iceland coming up when we were in Normandy was that Iceland Air had just instituted their flights out of Edmonton, flying out of Edmonton, and it was a really good connection. In fact, many of us who went to Normandy had flown Iceland Air. So that really kind of was one of the stimuli. And so originally when we booked, we were able to fly directly, but that, of course, with COVID and et cetera, wasn't the case. And luggage was missing. Fortunately, Kathy and I, being the equestrians we had brought in our hand luggage, our helmets, and we had worn our tall boots. So if all else failed, at least we had our head and our feet covered.
Okay, let's talk about Iceland.
Just a few things. If we were speaking to one another in real time, I'd be saying, hey, has anybody out there been to Iceland? I know at the ROMU AGM, a couple of people came up, several to talk about this. Mark Lund was one who said he had spent some time in Iceland, having traveled over to, I think, Denmark, or maybe it was Norway. I apologize, Mark, if I'm getting that wrong, but to see relatives, and had ended up with a stopover and spent some time in Iceland. It's a great place. Very interesting. It's a small island nation located between Norway and Greenland. You could fit the whole island into Alberta 6+ times. Population is about a third to a quarter, maybe, of the size of Edmonton. So it's a small place, and people are sparsely settled around the outside of the island, mostly on the southwest, up through the northwest coast. Interesting for me, one of the things I found most interesting was that, of course, people are very aware of their own Icelandic history, the Icelanders, and very aware of it and able to tell you about, they sort of see themselves as having come together as a country, 930. The year 930 AD. They had the oldest parliament in Europe, or maybe in the world. I think at least in Europe anyway. In 930, settled by the Vikings, of course. Many legends and sagas relating to that. They talk about people from Denmark, Sweden, and British Isles. British Isles were unwilling participants in this settlement, in that they were typically captives and slaves that the Vikings had picked up on their travels and taken over. So really wasn't settled till, about year 900. Many things to see, wonderful places. The 3 UNESCO sites are all basically natural history sorts of places, 2 national parks, and then one of the only islands that has been grown up. Volcanoed up out of the ocean. So it's been a very interesting history to watch an island as it settles with the first. It was in the 1960s, and the first earthworm was discovered there in the 80s, etc. Anyway, so various wonderful things to do and see in the country.
So before we get to the actual horse riding tour, we were, of course, able to spend a few days looking at some of the sites. We did take a couple of tours around the island. These pictures here represent some of the highlights of the capital city that you all know is Reykjavik. On the left, you see one of the many stunning public art pieces that are in the capital. Many of you will know this picture of what's the name of that church? Hallgrímskirkja in Reykjavik, a view from up top over the city. Again, you see on the buildings downtown a lot of painting and really kind of funky stuff. And also there's a very bland landscape in some ways, of course, very rocky, very austere, but it's also a colorful place, like lots and lots of flowers and water and everything else. So there you see a church in Reykjavik. One of the things that people always say about Iceland is, I'd love to go, but it's too expensive. And there's no simple answer to that question. I suppose it is expensive. But certainly we found it depended. We were certainly able to find accommodation that was very reasonable, where we were able to cook for ourselves and not too far from the main area in Reykjavik. I looked it up today because I was just curious, and it's a few years ago, but we paid about $160 a night for quite a spacious place with cooking facilities. The thing at the time we went that was absolutely out of sight expensive was car rental. Because there was no cars available on the island during COVID, we thought we'd rent a car. It was almost impossible to find one, and the cheapest one I could find was $500 a day. So it was a hard no to that. We managed on other tours.
Well, and one of the things I would mention, if you see the site, the picture sort of in the middle from the top of the Hallgrímskirkja, that it's actually a very walkable place. Obviously, it's at sea level, it's flat. It's a small place. You see some of the colors in amongst the roofs, and some of the houses are incredibly lovely, bright colors. So it is that sort of land of contrasts. It's a cool city to walk around. There's lots of funky things to see. Sort of the culture and personality, if you will, of Iceland and its peoples and its main. You notice the signs that don't flush and in case of fire, exit before taking selfies. They got a very dry wit, and it comes out in many different ways, but very enjoyable. Very liberal, very progressive society. What was the statistic you were talking about, Denise, about women?
Women. There was some UNESCO recognition, and Iceland has won it now, I don't know, 10 or 12 times in a row for the country with the best gender diversity. So there's been traditionally at least equal representation, if not more, of women in parliament, and many prime ministers, etc., who are women.
So it's I think, like a lot of Northern European cities, very much sort of a coffee culture, a beer culture, cafes, etc. It seems very Northern European in some of those regards, but kind of more liberal and funky in some ways. The picture in the middle is something we did not go and see, but they have many, many museums and galleries in town, like per capita, it seems like more than most places I've been. The one in the middle is the World Phallological, I think it's called, museum dedicated to the phallus. Past name. Of course, we had other things to be looking at, but there is one of the many funky things that there are to see and do in Reykjavik and beyond.
Yeah, and I certainly found it to be true that the Icelanders, they revere their own culture. And that's certainly expressed, like many of you will know, the many famous Icelandic writers, for instance. And when you go around the city, you see all over the place, right? Statues and plaques celebrating these Icelandic writers or painters or whatever. So the place of the artist in their society, I would say, is, it made my heart sing. Say no more.
And we got out of town a few couple
times. Here's highlights from a couple of tours. Again, these kind of images are the types of ones that one typically associates with Iceland. I'm not going to we didn't put the names on here because the names are too long to fit on the slide. And my Icelandic is terrible and not very easy to pronounce the words. But the famous lagoon with the icebergs, you can take a boat tour and go around there. The second picture in the middle, Iceland, of course, is well known for its geothermal hot springs. That is one of the national parks where we stopped overnight. I think it's called something like Hervellir. The other is a very famous waterfall. You can see, if you've got good eyesight, you're actually able to walk behind that. So it's quite amazing because the water is falling right over you. And the final one at the bottom, when we were there, again, as many of you will remember, there was actually live volcanic activity. So we couldn't get too close, but if you look at the little red dots there actually was lava pouring down there. And I have to say, I was just gobsmacked by being able to actually see that happen.
Yeah. When you're traveling around and while the eruption was on, as it was in the summer, and then it kind of died back, and then it sort of erupted again. But they have a live feed, and you can check in at any time of day and find out what the activity is, how much, how active it is, what the weather is like, etc. It's very much a live activity, if you will, volcano watching.
Yeah. And this, in terms of location in Iceland, is less than an hour outside of Reykjavik, right? You can see it from the airport. You could see the glow in the sky.
So that brings up a quick question then, when you were talking about transportation and the trouble finding rental vehicles. So in town and to some of these sites and stuff, do they have like an Uber, something like, or can you like a car share or hire a car and a driver for a day? Or do they just have like organized tours? You get on a bus and do that?
Yeah,
sort of all of the above.
Yeah. Yeah, we found in Reykjavik, we either walked or we took an occasional public bus or cab. And we did take a couple of tours. The glacier area, we were actually, 15 hours that day or something ridiculous thing. We went a long, long ways.
The southeastern corner. It's in the, I think it's Vatnsdalr, the big national park on the sort of the bottom southeast corner, the biggest glacier outside of the Arctic Circle. And so that glacier actually feeds into the lagoon on the top left corner. And that, so that was a long day.
Yeah, but it was an organized tour.
Yeah, and we had a lot of stops, incredible, lovely stuff. But driving in Iceland is apparently we didn't do so again because of the cost of cars. They just hadn't bulked up on numbers of cars post-COVID again at that point. But they drive on the right-hand side, thankfully.
Yeah.
And really good roads. There's a big ring road around if you're going, and camping, people camp kind of everywhere, and so it's quite manageable. Just happened to be difficult on a car point of view because of the timing of our visit.
Yeah. All right, here we go in the horsey part. People often ask about the Icelandic horses, so we thought we'd say a few words about the horses themselves before we get into the travel part. They're obviously a very old breed. They've been in there forever. They are smallish animals. So you see the measurement there, 52 to 56 inches at the wither. Just for comparison purposes, those of you who might know quarter horses, a lot of them would be, the hand is roughly 4 inches. So quarter horses would be typically 14, 15 hands. Our horses, Joan and I, a thoroughbred and a warm blood, our horses are 16 hands plus. If you're looking at the top level competition dressage and jumping horses, they're often 17 hands. So they are kind of cute and small, very hardy, very friendly.
Yeah, they're in fact, it was funny because it's sometimes hard to get a picture of them from the front, because if they're looking at you and whatever, they tend to come towards you. It's hard to get a picture of them sometimes. One of the purest breeds, in that there are no other horses in Iceland. They were, as noted, brought in by early settlers, and its breed has developed from some of the Norse and British interbred. Anyway, so they are their own pure breed. And they keep it that way because if an Icelandic, no other horses are allowed to come into Iceland. Even if an Icelandic horse leaves the country or is taken out of the country, it can't return. So there's very little in the way of diseases. There isn't, they don't have any, biohazard concerns from other horses being brought in. In fact, we had to be scrupulously clean and sterilized in terms of anything we brought in with us to ride, our helmets, our boots, etc. They're gaited horses, meaning they have like a unique pattern gaits, or the two notable are the tolt, which is like a very quick high stepping trot, very ground covering sort of a pace, and the flying pace, which is pacing is where the legs on the same side move at the same time rather than alternating, which is a more normal pattern. they have a lot of horses,
Mhm.
about 80,000 of them, one for every 4 people, and they can reach some high speeds and go long distances. They're very strong, very hardy. Notably, the last thing we have to say is they are not ponies.
Yeah.
This is a point of some note because the Icelanders get rather offended. They do get offended if you call them ponies. But one of the things that we do at home in the barn and with the Horsey people we know, we talk about our ponies. It's a term of affection. For example, we're out of the barn. If we're going to leave the barn and go out to the field and get the horse, we often say, "Oh, I'm going to get my pony." So we had to be quite careful not to call them ponies through affection, not relative to their size. So.
Okay, so here is a little bit of detail for those of you who are curious about where we actually went. We went basically from the south of the country almost to the north. The island, as you have already heard, is not that big. So we were on the trail, we were there 7 nights, 6 riding days. We covered roughly 200 kilometers in that period of time. So some days we were going like stink. If you look at the map on the left-hand side, you can see where we were. You see Reykjavik in the bottom corner, and the blue line shows where we went. You can see the white on either side of that line is actually the 2 very large glaciers. So we rode through an area that is, for the most part, undeveloped. We're talking a few farmers and a few huts. It was interesting when I showed this map to my husband's relatives who were Icelandic and lived in Reykjavik, and he looked at it and said, "Oh my goodness, you guys are going places where most Icelanders have never been."
Yeah. It's very like the map on the right. You see a bit of more obviously topographical view, and you're really up and over on the top of plains, the lava fields, and some of it looks very desolate.
And it is, but beautiful.
Yeah. The background picture I'll just mention first. We had incredibly good weather,
Yeah, we did.
notably, and maybe this was a global warming thing. We certainly were warned to bring clothes for inclement weather, cold weather, rainy weather, but we had incredibly good weather. So the ride, there were 17 of us riders plus 5 guides, Icelandic and a couple of German, 1 Swedish guide. So there were 3 of us from Canada, Denise, Kathy, and myself, 3 girls from the US, and everybody else was from Europe, and it was all women. But so it was largely a European group, apart from us, 6 North Americans, I guess. We traveled in a group with 90 plus, I would say, horses, and we would ride a distance and then change horses 2 or 3 times a day, depending on how long the ride was that day. The horses go at a very good clip. They go really quickly, and we have a bit of a clip to show you later, which will sort of illustrate that. But they are very rugged, but there's limits, right? So we traveled with these horses, and we would switch off during the day. We rode from hut to hut, the places we were staying. Some of them were luxurious and some were very rustic. We had a support van that brought along our luggage and our cook and food, etc. Each day we'd ride from somewhere between 15 to 50K over some very rugged terrain. At the end of the day, we'd get the horses settled in the paddock they would be in overnight, have ourselves some drinks, some really good food, which was most welcome. There was often singing. Our guide in particular, but I think lots of Icelanders just really enjoyed their music and singing and stuff. And he had created a songbook, and we had some real good sing-alongs, and then sleep happened. Sleep was good.
So here's a variety of different shots as we were on the trail on our journey. You'll see in the left, the top left hand, there is one of the smaller huts, I would say, that we stayed in, and the group gathered at the end of the day. Is that me out front?
Yeah.
Okay, there's me. I think I have a drink in hand. Then you'll see again the ruggedness of the terrain in the bottom left. Some places it is very clearly ancient lava fields where that is the rock from the eruptions, and you see that pattern in it. Lots of other places it's various kinds of rocks, lots of water and rivers. Yeah, lichen. Yeah, we were often going in kind of very like almost sheep kind of tracks in between those rocks. But again, the horses are phenomenally sure-footed and hardy to go through that. You see in the upper right hand, you might ask the question, how does one control 90 or so horses? It's very interesting. That is a typical rest stop. And if you look carefully, you can see that the horses are corralled simply by a rope. The guides would carry stakes, put the stakes in the ground. The horses would be all driven into there. And then the guides would somehow miraculously go in and pick out different horses for people and bring them forward. And they knew the names of all of those horses and who had been ridden. They kept like a big spreadsheet, right, to manage all of it. I couldn't remember from day to day which horse I'd ridden. I'd say I was on one. I think it was brown, and it had a nice landing name. It was so hard to keep track.
They had some very interesting, like Skelmich and Glochus.
Oh God,
and
yeah.
Some Colbin, some very interesting names.
Yeah.
Just for info, the our guide is one of the farmers that make up this collective that operate these tours. He doesn't own all these horses. I think he owned about 20 plus of them.
Yeah.
But they're as a group of farmers, as a company, they bring their horses together. That farmers that have, who are their appropriate horses for such an activity, and so they bring them together in the spring, and then they do these tours, and then in the fall they have a sort of a roundup, and the farmers come
them again
and separate their horses and take them home. But yeah, real amazing group of horse.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. A few more slides, and then we'll open it up for discussion.
On the upper left, this is one, of course, I love those through the years sort of pictures, but I was very excited one day. We were on probably one of the more obvious, clearer tracks that went for quite a ways. And again, you see what lovely weather we're having here. And I got to lead. I got to be in front. And this horse, Dama, was just a wonderful horse, very steady, beautiful paces, and as I say, you're moving at a fair speed. And, so we probably led for, 10 miles or something. It was quite a ways. It was wonderful. Anyway, and here's Denise with one of the, we would take pictures of ourselves and our horses every day. But you notice that picture and the one over on the right, they have these incredible full manes. In the winter, they're incredibly fluffy all over, but certainly, still in the midsummer, these incredible full manes, just beautiful. A little challenge getting them a little bit clean, but gorgeous. The two pictures in the middle represent the little hut on the left-hand side. There was one of the huts we stayed in, just a few steps down into this natural hot spring. There's a pipe on the sort of bottom right of the picture there that was quite hot water from the little geyser next door, a little bubbling pot next door. And if the water in the pool is getting cold, you'd pull the pipe in, and when it got too hot, you'd push it back over into the stream. It was gorgeous. And then in that picture and in the picture up closer to the top, Denise led a few yoga sessions as a regular and long-time yoga practitioner. And I opted by doing hot yoga in the pool. I said, etc. But don't say anything about that.
No, we're good. Okay, good. Okay.
Sorry.
Oh no, yes, go. You're gonna.
So as we got closer to the coast, things started to get a bit greener. We started to come down from the high plains, and here. One of the things that I really quite loved about this picture was, it appeared. You could see it's greening up and the layers of volcanic activity, etc. We'd have this long line of, would be quite spread out, of course, with 90 horses, and you'd have a group of riders at the front and a group at the back, and then the horses coming along in between. And we happened to be snaking up out of this valley and getting closer to home in this picture. But you can see, it's just quite spectacular in terms of looking back and seeing the horses and the landscape, etc.
So Joan's going to play this in just a minute. This is a little video clip of the horses coming into the barn at the end of a day. So you get a sense of them moving. I would just ask you to look very carefully when you see there's two riders at the end. And when you look at the gait on those horses, they are doing the gait that's called a tolt. So it will give you a sense of what that actually looks like.
Yeah.
There's the tote. Yeah.
I might just redo that because it's okay. It's just I don't know why it's even some of them in the can be familiar with super.
Can people see that, Trevor?
Yeah, we can see it, but it looks a little jumpy.
I don't know why it never did that before. So one more time.
Okay, so it's on your end. It's not our end. All right.
Oh, I don't know where it is. Yeah, let's see a little bit. No, it's still jumping.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's doing how it did before, but we got a little bit. But if it's switch on these two, there's it's just a very quick action, and it moves at great speed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'd be coming back. I think there was a barn there, but they weren't in a barn. They were in a paddock, and
Yeah.
but you know, and they're moving maybe a little quicker because it's we know we were close to the end of the day, whatever. But that's kind of about the speed we were moving throughout most. Like it's fast, and you're going.
Here's the Joan. This is yours. Actually, just really our final destination.
Yeah, this was the final day of riding. One of the nice things the guides did was, you know, by this point, each of us would have ridden upwards of 10 plus horses. And, you know, we obviously had our favorites, and they asked us to make a note what were our favorites. And they tried to line us up with riding our favorites, which was lovely because certainly, you know, as I say, we had our favorites. And this valley is up close to, well, on the north coast, basically, and where the guide, Harker, and his family live in the behind the red top there is actually, I think, a barn, but this is their home country. And our friend Kathy in the upper right there is just a beautiful valley and horses in the fields beyond, and then out towards the ocean. Bottom right, again, it was their family home, and then they added on and made it into this guest house, and was one of the most comfortable lodgings. Very, very nice. And then our green bus that was, if we were riding and there were some of their roads that would meet us often for lunch or refreshments or whatever, but a lot of the time it was we were riding places you couldn't possibly get on. But
and here we are at the final end. They actually, like all good schools, had a graduation ceremony. I've got my certificate there, and that is our guide, Harker, on the right. And Kathy and Joan had to, of course, indulge in the Icelandic sweater routine. And there's the beautiful sweaters that they bought, made by Harker's mother, I think.
Aunt,
yeah, some relative.
Yep.
And the final picture again there, we were back in Reykjavik and decided that we should do the traditional Icelandic thing, which is to go to the thermal baths. And I mean, these places are phenomenal. It's two big swimming pools, and you see along the side those circular kind of dipping pools. They like their hot water, and they had, I think, 7 different pools of different temperatures. And to just show you that Iceland is a very small place, the 3 of us went there, and who should arrive the next minute coming into the hot pools but our guide, who was in town and just happened to pop in there.
Yeah, so it's what people do. I mean, there were 7, I think, of those pools, and of course, it's all geothermal.
Yeah,
all their energy there is geothermal. Even when you talk about things like food and vegetables and whatever, huge greenhouses and stuff, it's all geothermal. Really cool. Really cool.
And here we are on the last day, outside our little apartment in Reykjavik, just waiting to go
to the airport. And, you know, people, again, back on the question, people talking about it being expensive. I have to say, I didn't find it overly expensive. I mean, you could certainly find reasonable places to stay. The good restaurants were very much this kind of the same price. What would tend to be expensive is if you wanted a snack that featured something you had to fly in, like Coca-Cola.
Yeah, groceries are the same prices.
Yeah, groceries the same price. And because of, again, the geothermal greenhouses, etc., lots of fresh fruits and vegetables year round, local year round. So I wouldn't say I found, you know, you can make it expensive, but it really wasn't a lot more expensive than places. Good value for money.
So you should all go.
You should all go. And so home we come. Back home, and of course, one of the first things we had to go out and see our own horses. It's lovely to go and be with horses elsewhere. Many of these activities, all the shows, everything else we do, first thing you want to do is come home and say hi to your horse. This was actually just a couple of weeks ago, just this fall back at the barn where we live.
And I must say, if you look at the size of these horses,
And it was really bigger than the
mine, and I've ridden them for 20 years, and I looked down and I went, oh God, that's far. I don't want to be coming off. Okay. And Joan, there's one.
Yeah,
one
thank you for joining us for our presentation. We have a few thank yous to say. We have another slide with just some additional info. But thank you, Ramu, for giving us this opportunity to look back at pictures of this and many fun things we've done. That alone was just a treat, to Margot for setting up the information going out, and particular Trevor for doing the tech to make this possible. One thing that Denise and I both wanted to say too is, well, that's us. That's how we spend a good bit of our time. How about you? What do you do? We'd love to see, sort of a who's next presentation, right? What do you do? Do you make something built? Did you perfect your sourdough recipe during COVID? Do you build canoes? Do you square dance? What is it that you do? So we'd love to see you join us on the presenting role and tell us a bit about yourself. So please do. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
This is the top one, is the riding tour company that we went with. The middle link here is just a great guide to all sorts of information about Iceland. And the bottom link this is the book, Wild Horses of the Summer Sun by Tori Bilsey. Wonderful, very readable memoir about riding in Iceland. That's us.
Joan, can you, because you're just displaying that presentation,
Yep.
we actually can click on those links. Do you mind at some point after this, can you just put the links in the email, and then when I post the archive, I'll make sure that the links are attached to it?
Okay, great. Yeah.
Yep.
And I do have some questions too.
Great.
Sweet.
Go.
So Mark and Lois want to know where the horses shoed.
No.
Yes.
Really?
Yes, sorry.
Oh,
yes,
they were. Yes, and in fact, that's one of the things the guides do, is, in addition to guiding, is look after the horse's feet. So there was the occasional lost shoe that came off, and filing and reattaching that happened to happen on the trail. Yeah, the ground is so hard and so rocky that they do keep them shod.
Sorry, that was just a momentary aberration in my mind. Because in fact, they have a specialist horse, and he carries the blacksmithing tools and stuff.
Yeah.
Nice. So I have a question. Did the horses actually take direction, or are they like your typical trail horses that people go on, where the horse just puts his head down, follows the trail? You can't move him left or right. He just keeps going.
Oh no. These are horses that they have their own. Some of them don't like following very well, and they would tell you whether the horse you're riding really needed to ride at the front or the back, depending on how. But they are very much their own independent-minded horses.
Yeah.
They very much have their own mind. You have to be. They're not just to get on and go for a tour about the country. You have to be a strong, I would say, a higher level rider to really both ride the horse and manage the physicality of it. Yeah.
But what I would say is, because people look at it and say, oh God, that's intimidating, I could never do that. We chose a harder tour. Mm-hmm. And I must admit, I panicked when we finally got there, thinking, what have I done? Can I do it? But for someone who would be interested and who wouldn't be an experienced rider, there are lots of ways to ride in Iceland. These very same companies do rides anywhere from a few hours to a few days long, and they will take people who are not experienced riders. They're cautious about what horse they put you on, and they obviously don't do as strenuous a type of a ride. So anyone could do it.
Excellent. Did you have a choice between a Western or an English saddle in Iceland?
They actually are Icelandic saddles. They, at a glance, look more like English in that they are flatter than a Western saddle, and they don't have a pommel. But they're different than English saddles as well, just a little bit differently built through the gullet, and they ride with long legs, long stirrups, and you sit differently just because of the different gaits. So no, the saddles, they were Icelandic saddles.
And last question is, what was your favorite Icelandic food?
Ooh. Well, it's interesting because the things that they have a lot of obviously are seafood.
Yes.
And so that was great. They have a lot of pork, and chicken and lamb.
Yeah.
I don't remember ever having beef, did we?
No. But not a lot of cows there.
Yeah, they don't really have a lot of cattle. They have a lot of sheep, and I love lamb. So
yeah.
I don't know.
For me, it was the fish.
Mhm.
Everywhere. Very, very fresh fish. Now, the Icelanders do have some very particular, like, what was that? Like
Fermented shark.
fermented shark or something that we tasted. I was not a particular fan of that, but in restaurants and certainly on the trail as well, we had fresh fish cooked and presented in many ways. They make a lot of kind of pies with it, hey?
Mhm.
You know, things with
Mhm.
with like potatoes and whatever mixed in,
Mhm.
but the fish is spectacular.
Yeah, the food was very good.
Oh, and licorice. I didn't know this.
It's their
I'm a
thing.
licorice fan. The Icelanders love their licorice and their sweets, so we had many, many different kinds of licorice.
Mhm.
Excellent. Thank you very much, ladies. I really appreciate that taking the time and doing this. Everyone else, there will be an archive done after this later today or tomorrow. I'll put it up on YouTube, and I'll put a link in the Facebook posting, as well as have the links for the presentation in there as well. And if you want to stick around afterwards, I'll turn after the recording's off. We'll turn the cameras on and mics on. So if you guys want to chat and ask some more questions, you can do that.